research into how public engagement works and what the lessons can be learned from it worldwide to increase participation and development in infrastructural energy projects. We could not have done this without Floor Alkemade and her research group at the TU Eindhoven and all our work in this area. Thank you for your big effort in this task. As it looks now, a second phase of this research will start early next year with attention for public engagement around CCSU, hydrogen and nuclear projects, of which the Netherlands will also be part. You can find a link to the UsersTCP website in the presentation, where you can find more information about the research and the other research that has taken place within the TCP. In addition to me, Kavita Mohan-Huneman and Franca Bryas from RVO were also involved in organizing this webinar. Thank you both for all the hard work you did on this. I will now briefly give the floor to Franca to tell more about the link to her domain, Social Responsible Innovation with Energy. Franca?
Thank you, Gerdien. Like you said, our team focuses on social responsibility in energy innovation, which links very closely to a lot of the content produced in the UsersTCP. And I'm therefore delighted that we can exchange insights on public engagement, among other subjects, and strengthen national and international research and knowledge on this. And hopefully this webinar will enable this even more. And with that, I would like to give the floor to Ira and Natalia, research at Renewable Grid Initiative.
Thank you very much, Franca. Thank you, Gerdien, for this nice introduction. I'm Ira Scheffer, and with me, Natalia Pimentel for Renewables Grid Initiative, RGI. Very shortly, we are a unique collaboration between transmission system operators and environmental NGOs across Europe. We're based in Berlin. And today, as Gerdien explained before, we will present our work as part of the project on public engagement for energy infrastructure. And what we will do today, we will present some insights and principles on meaningful public engagement gained out of this project. We will provide a tool we developed as part of this project, provide some nice example to show how these principles integrate together. And then at the end, I'm sorry, I think I have, please mute your microphones, okay? Okay. And then lastly, we will have a discussion based on this insight relevant to the Dutch context. So, starting with why do we actually need public engagement? Now, we see that there is a tendency now in the world to have a quick, faster and more renewable energy deployment. For example, the pledge for tripling renewables by 2030, which the EU is aiming to lead. This means that we will witness more decentralized energy production much more than ever before. And in essence, this means that the infrastructure used will be closer to people's home. Hence, the public needs to be, can and should be engaged. So public engagement, as we perceive it, can improve and speed up the implementation of energy infrastructure in an appropriate manner, then reducing the potential frictions between the different types of stakeholders within these processes. Now, talking about engagement, what is actually engagement? As we perceive it, as we interpret it out of the project that we've done, it is the involvement of the public in various stages of the energy infrastructure project. This includes not only the planning, but also defining the needs of certain infrastructures, the permitting and so forth, but also not only that, sharing and developing together the socioeconomic benefits that can be derived out of these types of projects. And in our work, we came to three, let's say, dimensions of engagement. The first one is information, where the public receives certain type of information and knowledge about certain projects and policies. The second dimension is consultation. It's a dialogue between the public and between other types of stakeholders. The public can shape some of the process aspects, but not so much the objectives and the outcomes. And this comes a little bit in contrast to empowerment, which where the public has the power and authority to design and shape the processes, the objectives, and the outcomes. Now, talking about what is public engagement, what we needed, who is actually needs to be engaged. So we come up with these three clusters of main stakeholders. First, our policymakers at national, regional, local levels, then the developers, whether this could be a TSO, a private entity that develops wind or solar farms, and then civil society, the third cluster, meaning not only civil society organization, but also communities and individuals. Hence, public engagement is a collaborative, multi-actor and multi-level process. So that's all very nice and good, but this is not an easy process, and public engagement has a lot of challenges. And in our work, what we did, we tried to sum up them into 4 main challenges. The first one is when you're facing little public engagement. This can be either that the public is not aware of the opportunities or the needs to be engaged, but also in times they have little interest in actually engaging. The second challenge would be public opposition. This means active resentment, active opposition to certain projects or initiatives. This can also come from political parties at national or local level. Another challenge is the need to save money and time when developing projects. And thirdly, some institutional barriers. And this can be, for example, certain regulations that hinder certain types of participation or certain types of stakeholders. So, having said that, the Netherlands. Now, we know on the one hand that the Netherlands, again, according to some of preliminary investigation that we did towards this webinar, all in all, in the Netherlands, there is still a majority in favor of the energy transition, in favor of deploying renewable energies. However, for example, in the survey from 2020, we see 53% support of energy transition, but on the other hand, we see 47 either opposing or indifferent, which is a percentage that needs to be taken into account. Then, on the other hand, most of the Dutch population is in favor of renewable energies like wind, but not in their backyard. And then we see again in summer that a shift in the government, a new government came in power, which may shape or reshape or redirect the Netherlands' policies and directions towards the energy transition. So, considering these changes and considering the changes that the Netherlands has gone through in recent years, we provide some thoughts about these challenges that I presented before within the Dutch context. And this is why there is a big purple question mark on this slide. And these are relatively suggestions or ideas, and we can discuss it further in the discussion part of this webinar. So in the Netherlands, little public engagement can be now, for example, simply with the shift of interest of the public. After the invasion of Russia to Ukraine, we see more concerns about the energy security than, for example, tackling climate change. We see, or perhaps we will see more public opposition to certain EU policies, to the ambitious climate goals, or again, to nearby infrastructures. Another challenge regarding the resources is something inherited in the Dutch planning process, which is the reaching of consensus among all types of stakeholders, and this may come on the expense of time and resources. And lastly, some ideas about institutional barriers, perhaps the decentralized system within the Dutch governance system between the local and the national level perhaps can hinder some types of participation. And again, this is something in question mark. We need to discuss it. We need to think about it, and we will come to this later on in this presentation. So, presenting the who, the what, and the why, and the challenges, our project actually will have tried to contribute towards the solutions of these problems. So we will ask, how can citizen communities and other stakeholders be meaningfully involved in energy infrastructure projects? And with that, I would like to give the microphone to my colleagues, to my colleague Nati. Thank you for now.
Thank you, Ida. So basically, based on those challenges and seeking on the question of how to involve citizens and different actors into the projects in a meaningful way, we created an interactive guide, the Engage for Energy Guide, focused on specific groups. So if you could go to the next slide. So the idea of the guide is that it's an interactive PDF, so it's available online for anyone to use, but it also is focused on the user. So the idea is that the user is centered at the center of the guide. And when I say the user, I mean specific groups, but also specific technologies. So basically, we try to focus the research and also the guidelines to serve three specific groups. So basically developers of grid, wind and solar projects, but also policymakers at different levels of governance, and then also civil society, including NGOs, but also citizens. And in that sense, we also focused on the technologies that I mentioned. So the whole guide is focused on grids, wind and solar energy. And based on the research that we did, so basically a 1 year long research within the UsersTCP task, public engagement for energy infrastructure, we created two specific studies. One of them related to the drivers and barriers of public engagement. So basically looking into what drives and deters citizens to engage, but also looking at the different institutional and organizational barriers and drivers within project promoters. And in that sense, we also created an impact assessment of specific cases, both successful or negative cases for engagement in energy infrastructure. In that sense, we also try to get feedback from experts in the area, organizing workshops, but also attending specific academic events, and also creating online meetings with experts and having interviews. So basically trying to harvest the experts' knowledge and input and putting that into our research. And lastly, of course, both RGI and our partner in this project, the Institute for European Energy and Climate Policy, the IEECP, we both worked on these matters previously and continue to work currently. So this also was part of our whole research. Based on all of these knowledge that we created within the task, we try to focus also the guide, as I mentioned, is focused on the user. So we try to understand what aspects the user might be searching for. And one of those aspects would be the energy infrastructure lifecycle. So basically, there are different ways to engage meaningfully with different actors throughout the whole life cycle of the infrastructure. And that does not, basically the tool also showcases that meaningful engagement does not begin at a project level. So it's not once we have a grid or a wind power project that the engagement with the public should start, but actually way before it, already on the policy making and also on the energy system planning stages. And it should also go throughout the whole life cycle until the very end of life. And then also beyond the life cycle, we also, if you could go to the next slide, yes, thank you. We also considered specific principles for meaningful engagement. And basically, this was also one of the key takeaways from our research. So first of all, we understood that stakeholders should be engaged early, and that means before decisions have been made, so that they can actually provide input that is meaningful for whatever stage the infrastructure is in. So basically they can provide input and that is going to be heard and can be implemented. The second principle that we considered and that came in with our research is transparency, so that all the stakeholders are aware of all the different processes and outcomes within the engagement process, but also what could come out of it, what kind of input they can give that could impact the final product. The third principle then is inclusiveness. So basically that means trying to include different individuals and social groups, as I mentioned, in the entire infrastructure lifecycle, but also creating opportunities for them to meaningfully engage and be included. So for example, some actors might not have the time to go to an event in person, while others might prefer to have an in-person meeting. So trying to include those two types of groups, both in a digital online way, but also in-person aspects could increase the inclusiveness of this whole engagement. And the last principle, of course, is one of the main key takeaways of our research, which is developing trust. So creating trust with different stakeholders is at the center of creating a meaningful engagement. If people trust you, they will want to engage with you. They will want to provide their knowledge as well. And then the whole engagement will be much more efficient and meaningful. Then we also, from this whole research, so looking at the challenges, looking at the life cycles, we try to understand what are the benefits that project promoters or policymakers could take out of the engagement. And in that sense, one of the key benefits is, of course, that it can support the achievement of policy goals. So basically trying to engage with as many stakeholders could actually provide a policy that's more achievable, more feasible, and that's also more acceptable from different stakeholders. Secondly, we also understand that it can provide a mutual understanding of the energy development, so the energy transition. So basically, if citizens are aware that the energy transition requires certain infrastructure, they might be more willing to actually put a windmill, for example, in their backyard. And lastly, but not least, we also understood from the policymaking perspective that engagement could also reduce opposition. So creating awareness and of course, collaborating with the different stakeholders could also reduce any concerns that people might have. Everything is better communicated, and then basically the policy and energy plans are more acceptable and less opposed to. Well, these are the benefits, and now we can go to a brief demo for the Engage for Energy tool. So I'll also share in the chat the link, but let me share my screen. So basically, the Engage for Energy tool is available on RGI's website, and also it can be accessed through the UsersTCP task webpage. And as I mentioned, it's an interactive PDF, so it can be as easily as to click here and start. There's a brief introduction about the task itself and how we came up with the results, and also a short tutorial that you can go through and understand how the tool works. I'll skip it for now because of time, but basically going through the step-by-step guidelines, you can basically try to understand what can you do, what are recommendations for your specific context. So for example, considering who we have here today, so basically the Netherlands policy making process, we can go here and then basically try to understand at a national level what could be done, and then these specific pathway within the guidelines for policymaking, we make it different for each governance level. So here we have the life cycles process that I mentioned. So here, policy goals or scenario building. And in that sense, it will change according to which governance level you select. So here again, in the regional, we see again the policy aspect, the policy stage, then the scenario building, then spatial planning, investment plan at regional level, and then at local level, we see the different aspects. So spatial planning, construction, operation of the infrastructure, and then end of life. So going through the national, for example, and more into the policy level, we already see recommendations from our research, and that is to meaningfully engage with stakeholders, but also the methods. And once you click on, for example, the meaningful engagement, you can also see the recommendations that we have for this specific actors, so policymaking at national level, but also on the policy stage. And then we can see all the 4 principles that I mentioned, and what specifically can you do at this stage. And then beyond the general principles and specific actions, we also say for each context, who should be involved in this process and what can you expect as a benefit. Then, as I mentioned, we have the methods and formats. So this is also related to what Ida presented before, the different levels of engagement. So first of all, sharing information, and then here recommended actions and specific things that you should make sure to include in your actions. Then consultation, and finally empowerment. So the idea here is that all of these different levels are considered and are implemented in your engagement process. And finally, at the end of each recommendation for each context, we also have an inspiration example and links to where you can both learn more about the specific case, but also check out our report, the assessment report. And again, you can just start over and try to understand a little bit more of, for example, project promoters or civil society, and so on and so forth. And now I'll ask Ida to share this slide again. Thank you. I just sent also in the chat the link to the tool. But before we could, so basically looking at specific examples of how you can look at public engagement from your perspective, we brought a couple of inspiring cases. Yes, thank you. So specifically, this was a project in Switzerland implemented in 2021, which is the Citizen Forum. And the idea here is that the cantons, so basically the regional government, try to understand basically how people would like to better live together. So it was basically involving the citizens and trying to have their input into creating policy for the climate action and also the 2030 plan. And the idea here is to include also proposals so that people who could have a say already in the policy level, so really early in the process, what could they envision for their future? Since it's their future, they should also have a say. And this would basically, the outcome of this was also 104 proposals on different topics. So mobility, biodiversity, waste management, urban planning, climate emergency, and so on and so forth. So basically trying to understand how people would like to see their government seeing the climate action into place. And another example, also related to already really early in the process, not specifically to projects, but basically looking at more of a energy system planning stage. We have the decision theater, which was implemented in 2021 again in Germany, and basically brought experts and stakeholders to use the decision theater, which is a specific platform where people can see the different choices and different pathways, how would they impact the different aspects of the energy transition. And this allowed people to also provide their input at their energy system planning and really have an impactful, a meaningful engagement in this process. So also not at the project level, but at the energy system planning stage. And also now I'll give the floor to Ida to present a couple of more examples for you.
Thanks, Nati. The third example, it's really interesting one. We find it's a computer game developed by the Spanish TSO Redea a couple of years back. And the idea is to have an educational tool for high school students and their teachers about the energy transition, about the needs to deploy more renewables and more grids to support them. And we think this is a very innovative, interesting way of first have an early engagement, the principle of early engagement, and also have gaining trust between different types of stakeholders, between the TSOs and the authorities, and this young population. And this is a very nice approach to getting these people who are usually not part of the conversation about the energy transition, youth, into the talk, into the conversation, into the discussion about why we need energy transition, why we need certain types of infrastructure, and so forth. And on top of that, we perceive it as a way to prepare this audience more to get to have them more knowledgeable about these discussions later in the future when in times when they will have more decision power in certain types of processes. The last example we would like to present today is of a specific wind power project in Ireland called Galloway Wind Park. And here the unique issue was that not only the type or the way the infrastructure was designed together with the community, but also the community benefits were designed and decided together with the affected communities. And here, eventually they discussed certain revenues from the revenues of the electricity directed annually towards the community. And within this process, there were certain types and certain intervals of consultations, and essentially a very broad, comprehensive approach of how to engage the whole affected communities towards this long-lasting infrastructure. So, lastly, we would like to consider what we presented before with the principles and the stages and the examples. We come up with 4 main policy recommendations. There are a few more, but we try to dense them into 4. The first one is that we need to have more and better communication about the energy transition, about the engagement opportunities, and not only that, the benefits that can come up of participation and infrastructure projects. Second is the need to provide more resources into public engagement. True, it takes time, it takes certain investments, but overall, as we perceive it, it can save time and resources in the long run. Thirdly, we need to support more capacity building, first and foremost, within certain types of organization. That can be private entities, but also local, regional, and national authorities. And the second, building capacities for other stakeholders. For example, local authorities or national authorities can try and have capacity building initiatives and actions towards certain types of stakeholders and the public. And lastly, the need to initiate and support much more stronger multi-level and multi-stakeholders collaboration in order to achieve the energy transition goals. So with that, we are finished more or less our part of the webinar. We would be happy if you could spread the word and share what you have seen here in our public engagement tool. We thank you for the attention. And to start the discussion and initiate the discussion, we would like to pose two questions. And we ask you to consider them in your local context, in the Dutch context, and in the context of your daily work. So first, the first question would be, looking at the principles for promoting public acceptance, could you use the principles in your own work or in the Dutch context? The principle of transparency, inclusiveness, early engagement, and gaining trust. And what would be the difficulties in applying those principles? And second, given again the Dutch context, what do you think is missing from the principles that we presented so far? And how can that be improved or implemented? And I ask you, please raise your hand if you want to ask questions or suggest anything for the discussion, or write it in the Q&A option in Teams. Thank you very much.
There's also already a question in the Q&A session. So Annemiek asked, do you see less opposition later in the process if you start public engagement very early in the process? Do you have proof examples that because of early engagement, the entire process from policy making to project realization is shorter? So maybe I can begin to answer, and then Ida, you feel free to complement. But yes, our research has seen less opposition when the public is engaged meaningfully. That does mean early engagement, but also different aspects, as we mentioned. So basically, letting people have the power to change whatever your decision is. So basically, not having a decision already made. It's really important. It's very difficult to make this association. So basically having proof that the entire process will be shorter, because the same process cannot be done twice. So with public engagement and without. So it's a bit difficult to kind of prove this, but we do have a lot of successful examples of how early engagement actually change different stages of the whole infrastructure development. Ira, do you want to add something?
Thanks, Nati. I think one interesting example in this regard would be there is a big transmission line project in Germany called Südlink, connecting the wind power from north of Germany towards the southern part of Germany, where most of the industry is located. And this project is taking part by two transmission system operators, TenneT and TransnetBW. And at some parts of this huge transmission line project, certain parts received a lot of objections. And so what the transmission system operators did, first of all, they set the ground before, but they also engaged with the communities informally and formally, in ways that eventually the infrastructure was changed to answer to people's needs. And according to what we perceive, this kind of coming towards and working with communities actually had an impact towards the successful completion of certain parts of the project. And we think that if the transmission system operators would have worked only through very strict formalities, this kind of collaboration could not have happened. This kind of positive outcome eventually could not have happened. Yeah, please. Jon van Diepen, bitte, please.
Yes, good morning. Thank you. I'm the Secretary of Energy of Flevoland, the cooperatives in our province. We are looking for our role to play in energy transition in Flevoland. And what I learned more and more is that we have to know each other, the three parties, the developers, the decision makers in the town hall, and all the people that work there, and people from the citizens that we represent. One of the things that's difficult is that we don't have budget to organize ourselves. And from the national government, they give money to the local community, to the town hall. But all that money is spent by the town hall, and we don't get any. So that's a complaint, and I'm not here to complain. I'm here to share my knowledge that I think we have to know each other far more better than we do now. We have to focus on how to organize that. We have to meet, because if we don't meet, we don't get to know each other. We don't trust each other. We don't get anywhere. So we have to know each other better. That's what I want to give.
May I react and ask a question about it? When you provide or presented the need to get to know each other in the Netherlands, do you think there is some mechanisms for that? Does it need a special organization? Does it need to be formally or informally, in your opinion?
Yes, there is a national organization which is called Energie Samen, where all the about 500 cooperatives are gathering together, and they are talking on national level to the government. But in the province, we have to do it from energy from Flevoland in our province, and locally we do it with our local energy corporations. But there's not really a structure for it. On every level, they are making their own plans, how to share budget or how to communicate. And I don't think that's the answer you want to hear, but it's a bit difficult to answer. Maybe somebody else can. Does anybody recognize this?
Please first let's Strixta. Yeah, sorry if I doing wrong with the name. Sorry about that.
You did pronounce it well, so compliments for that. It's Streekstra indeed, from the northern of the Netherlands. Yeah, I like to give a reaction to John. I totally agree that we have to speak to each other much more. And at the same time, I want to place a remark, because we're talking about stakeholders, and in the same time, we only talk about citizens and energy corporations. And there are a lot of more stakeholders. It doesn't have to be always the citizen. It doesn't have to be always a corporation. So I think we have a huge challenge to go back to the climate agreement in the Netherlands, which says that we have to work together with the stakeholders, for example, to reach local property for 50%, but not only with citizens. So I want to break a lance, I don't know how that is in English, to go back to how we thought on national level to do it together. And in the operation, we don't read anymore the central things about how we want to reach together projects. So I think I totally agree with Jan, because we have to speak about, let's go a step back. What is the pure thought for our goal? And please, let's take that route and not challenge each other. It must be that group, or it must only be the citizen, or it must only be, let's get pure again. And that's it. Thank you.
Okay, next, please, Nadia.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's really amazing. Your effort is appreciated. And thank you very much for raising so many topics, which actually we are supposed to tackle as we speak. My background is capital equipment procurement, so I am coming from big projects, big value projects globally, so including energy infrastructure. So I'm pretty aware what is going on and what are the challenges. These are not only the value, but this is also the agreement. And the agreement is on national, regional, local, and individual level. In this aspect of breakdown from the top down, in the Netherlands, there is a tradition to break down the processes into tiny bits. And some of the bits are very much influenced by the political situation. So one party comes and changes the things, and yeah. And I'm coming from the business. These changes, these fluctuations are not helping. So we are together in order to figure it out how to support each other. Because with my business thinking, we need to get to the public. And here in the Netherlands, the people are coming from different background, and they do not have the access to all this information. And I'm sharing this experience because now I'm a project manager in Energy Bank, and these are the energy coaches going from address to address, from resident to resident, to explain how to save energy, how to get rid of the big bills, how to be careful, and what kind of behavior to develop towards the big business case, and this is the Climate Accord. In this process of me being between the institutions, regulations, legal basis, and the public, we meet a lot of challenges. And the first thing is not enough information to the people, to the residents. Not enough. Because we can get a lot of support from them. A lot. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you very much. Next, please, is what I see written is O on DIBA info.
Yes, that's,
So please
thank you
present
very
yourself
much.
also.
You spoke it a lovely way. That's my company. I'm advising First of all, thank you for your presentations. It all sounds very interesting. It is also something I learned already 10 years ago on my study in sustainable energy. And what strikes me the most is that this is always talk from policy level. So transparency is nice, but when a politician or policy maker is talking about transparency, it doesn't suit or it doesn't comply to what the public wants. To give you an example, there are many public initiatives in the Netherlands, people or companies that want to provide the Netherlands with energy. And they cannot provide this because we have what we call net congestion. So we have an energy transport system that is completely failing at the moment. That's the part the policy makers have to clear up. So that people that have initiatives to provide the Netherlands with energy can give it to the system. So in my opinion, it's a bit, it's interesting that policymakers are talking about stakeholders, transparency, and all these others very interesting topics. But that's only something that's in their minds. Whereas the public or the civilians or whatever, they want to contribute, but they cannot contribute because policymakers are blocking it. It's a bit in the way the other speakers already talked about it. So I think it's very important for your research group to focus on what are policymakers doing wrong and blocking in this energy transition, because the most blocking factor are policymakers. They are not the ones who providing it, they are blocking it. That's my contribution, alas.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Nati, do you want to contribute?
Yeah, just addressing a couple of the questions or comments that came in, specifically related to the citizens. So basically working with them, trying to understand their views as well. I think a great example is on the Ireland case, where, sorry, from policymaking, since from also educational level. So basically they have engagement that is very thought through. And we have a couple of those examples in our research, both in our guideline, but also in the impact assessment that we mentioned. But the idea is that they have specific forums that try to teach the citizens what specifically they can do. So that's also in the national level, but they also have school programs to educate. But also, for example, the transmission system operator, EirGrid, they have a specific strategy also to contact people and since an informal exchange with them in more like fairs or informal events, just to talk about the energy transition, but also on the project level to involve them. And it all came from a process that they asked the citizens how to be involved. So engagement, when we talk about
Nati, can you hear us? I think you're a bit, the connection was a bit bad. Can you please repeat the last minutes or so?
It's to that the transmission system operator in the Ireland context also asked people how they want to be engaged so that the citizens can have a say into the processes that they take into account. And this is very important because sometimes people don't have enough time, or they have a specific context that they want to be involved. So yes, basically having this whole engagement idea that people should have a say even into the level of engagement they should provide is really interesting. And also our guidelines also try to create this awareness of what should people expect. So the third group that we have there is the civil society level. So basically we try to think about the citizens. So what should they expect from a project developer, for example, and what is the best case scenario for engagement, so that they can also advocate for themselves and be empowered to ask that from their either authorities or project developers. I hope I addressed some of the points, but yeah, feel free to ask. Saskia?
Excuse me, just after, I apologize, after Streska, we have also 2 questions in the chat, please, okay?
Oh, yeah. Can I contribute now? Okay, my name is Katja Thoma. I'm a colleague from Saskia here, Streekstra. I think one of the challenges that we meet in the development of the environmental projects and sustainable projects is that within the life cycle of the project, the responsibility towards the public differs from starts with government or province, then it goes to government, then it goes sometimes to the woningcorporatie. I don't know what the word is, like the rental services for the build engagement. And then it varies to the project developer like we are from Eneco. And I think one of the challenges is that all these different stages and all these different parties responsible in the development of a project need to be on the same line. Like need to see like community engagement or public engagement on the same level to guide a project through all these stages. And then another point I want to make is that we talk about public, but the public is like so diverse. If you see like the public, we have projects there. The public consists of people with energy poverty and all kind of problems that make direct their lives. And on the other hand, we have projects. We have the initiatives like the energy corporations, and they want to develop their own windmills and wind parks. And it's a total different group. You can't compare. You need to have this, tailor-made aanpak.
Yeah, approach. Yeah, just a little short. I think the tailor-made approach is just what we need, because the your public is all the people who live there, people who work there, people who recreate in the area, and you have to speak all of them. Of course, you have special focus in some groups, and that's the point I made earlier. Let's do this really together, and not only with one focused group or a group you get focused on by the local government. You have to do this, dear developer, otherwise you will not come in. So let's get back to the pure thought, do this together. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. And I think one of the key takeaways also that we learned from the research is this informal aspect of engaging with people. So, for example, some of the experts mentioned going to like religious leaders in Portugal, for example, or in Ireland, going to sports associations. So going to where the people are instead of try to expect them to come to you. So basically trying to build that trust already, again, from an early process, so before decisions are made. And maybe we can, before passing to Nadia, maybe we can read the questions in the chat.
Yes, yeah. It's my
You can
turn
also,
or not?
you can say, yeah.
Thank you. We are together with Strikstra and Saskia. Hi. Because I'm the energy coach leader, and the energy coaches are going from home to home to find the root cause for the energiearmoede, for the energy poverty. Here in the Netherlands, we have this phenomena, and it's a problem. But in this case, we are helping each other with the energy companies because they cannot get their money from the used energy from people who are poor, and we have to tackle this problem. I would like that the Duurzaam Den Haag and Energy Bank work much closer with the energy companies, because then we will find out a way, we will figure it out what is the root cause, and then we can find out a way out of this situation. And this is not the fault only of the residents. The residents, as I mentioned, are coming from different backgrounds. They are immigrants, they are asylum seekers, and we have to work with these groups because we want them integrated in the society and within our targets for the Climate Accord, correct? So I offer my energy coaches to the energy companies because together we can make this glue in order to figure it out how to work our projects on the higher level. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Nadia. There is a question in the chat from Sander. In our region, citizens are confronted with a large number of national energy infrastructural projects, all with their own timelines, public engagement strategy, etc. We find that our citizens are so overwhelmed with all those projects that they are not attending public engagement meetups anymore. What would be a working engagement strategy for situations like this? I may just jump in and reflect on that. That part of our research project, we actually address some of this aspect of this point in terms of the need to have a more collaboration with other utilities and other regional and national authorities that are addressing infrastructure projects, for example, railways, water utilities, and so forth. And in order to have like a package of public engagement of all these projects together, and this recommendation comes in the sense that also it could save time and resources for the utilities and the local authorities and the national authorities themselves. And in this regard, I want to tap on one thing and add that we find also successful project and examples where the engagement process was managed by someone from the local community, appointed by the developer or the TSOs or something, or the responsible party for the project. And in this sense, we find that there's more trust can be gained. And thinking about augmenting all these resources together, perhaps this is one potential route to save time, resources, and speed up and bringing also more people to the table towards these two, like augmenting the engagement processes, but also bringing more people, appointing one person from the community to be in charge of this whole process. This is one potential solution, perhaps, to try and solve this problem. And next, We have what appears to be missing is grassroots or bottom-up activities, not initiated by policymakers or big energy corporations taking their share or profits. If anyone could relate to that, please, or have any other information about it.
This is my and number one at the hand. This is my question. Yes, well, I think when we started doing this energy transition, we were talking about citizens having making their own energy and giving it every energy they produced that was abundant to the community or to society or to the Netherlands. That's what started all these energy programs. By now, with our big energy companies, they're telling us what to do and to go to meetups and go to whatever. Grassroots is going from the public to the energy company. We in the early days, we also talked about the end of energy companies because the public themselves are producing energy, and they are at the moment in the Netherlands with windmills and with solar cells. So I think it is a nice idea to have engagement, the last question that was asked. And of course, people are not going to these meetups anymore because they're mainly disappointed because in these meetings, it's generally energy companies or other policy makers that have an interest in the outcome. The outcome being that the citizens agree to the policy or to the energy company's plans. And that is not participation or public taking public serious. So my point is, as I already pointed out in the earlier contribution, I'm still missing what the grassroots or the bottom up. I'm missing that. It's difficult to explain in English, but at the moment we are talking in this webinar about energy companies and policymakers going down to the public, and well, transparency is like make it transparent to the public. No, it's the public that has something to offer. And policymakers have to provide the means. Also, energy companies, they have to back up a little and give more space to the public to do their thing. And that's how the industrialized world started. It didn't start with big companies and policymakers. It started with little public initiatives. So that's again my another thing. I think energy poverty has nothing to do with the energy transition. I mean, it's the big companies that make the high prices. It's the energy companies that make high prices which people cannot pay. So I think we shouldn't mess up the energy poverty with the energy transition. That's something completely different, in my opinion. Thank you very much.
Before quickly moving to Strikstra, I would like to comment on that. What we try to do in our project is not to present the role of policymakers and developers, but on the contrary, is to actually show and how different types of stakeholders can be part of the process. And we think that, for example, within this tool, civil society or communities or individuals can have a look what they can do, the steps, for example, how can they be engaged? And also they can look what the developers are doing. So they have a better idea of what to expect in these kind of engagement processes. And we think we actually, there is need to encourage much more participation and much more engagement. And this is one of the difficulties, how you bring, for example, families, how you bring, for example, parents, I mean, people who are the audience that usually are difficult to reach. And it's a problem. I agree that this kind of the public may be disappointed, and this is what we're trying to do, trying to gain more trust in the process in order for the public to be able to have a voice. Again, this is what we also try with this tool to be accessible for all, and one step towards this goal. And please, Strikstra, for the next question.
I will keep it short. I totally agree with you, Ira. And also to come back to John's remark, let's speak with each other and not about each other. I think as a stakeholder, it's stakeholders from each other. Try to really speak to each other in a right way, how you're going to do things together and what your goal is. And I think if you have a good starting point with each other and you keep each other sharp, well, it all comes down to trust and the goal you will achieve hopefully together. Thank you.
Nati?
Thank you. So basically going back to these two last comments and also complementing a little bit of what Ida mentioned, our project also try to make people understand that there is a mindset to be changed. So instead of seeing the public as an ends to a goal or public engagement as it ends to a goal, to really try to understand that people can actually provide a very valuable information. For example, when developing a project in a specific area, that local community might have a specific knowledge on the type of birds or the type of the soil or anything in that sense in the environment that could also be very helpful for the project developer. And the idea here is to have a very meaningful engagement so that the people can share this input and can trust these developer or transmission system operator in this process, so that they feel that they can also have an impact. And I won't talk much more because I see we run out of time, and maybe I'll just give the floor to John before we finish up.
Thank you. This meeting has been an inspiration, and I think I'm going to think about how I could organize myself an energy cafe, in a real cafe. I'm also involved with a brewery. So if we want a real energy cafe, maybe the brewery is a good place to start and invite as well the local government as the commercial energy corporation that is active in our town, and local energy corporations in our town, and just do it, invite them like 5, 6, 7 times. Just put it in the agendas of everybody and see what happens. So instead of complaining, I will think about organizing this energy cafe. Maybe it works.
Okay, thank you very much. I would like to have a very briefly 2 minutes just to summarize a few points in the discussion. First of all, I think what came up here is some needs, especially in the Dutch context, but I think they are also relevant for many other countries in Europe and also around the world, is to have perhaps more structural or some mechanisms to enable certain types of collaboration and conversation between the different types of stakeholders. There is an issue of access to information, and perhaps this is one issue that can be tackled through various means by various types of, again, the partners in the process. Just again, issue what presented before, the computer game. I think this is something to think of, how to approach and how to provide these kind of informations tailored to different types of stakeholders. Another issue I think raised was the need to work closer with the developers and start to have a more collaborative and more equal level of conversation between the types of stakeholders. I will stop here. Nati, could you please continue from here?
Yes, of course. Thank you. So in light of all of this, all we have discussed, we would also like to invite you to our conference that is going to be held in Brussels on the 29th of October. And during this, we will talk about extended reality, so basically virtual reality and other technologies that could be used to actually allow people to see the infrastructure before it's even built. So the discussion will be a lot on public engagement, and it might be very valuable to you. I know that it's in Brussels, not the Netherlands, so maybe some of you can come or not, but either way, you are invited. And I'll share the link to the website page so that you can see more information, what we hope to have there. And we also will have a fair with different people presenting their solutions. So that's also hopefully valuable to you. And yes, I also like to thank you for the opportunity, and hopefully you learned as much as we did with this exchange.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Appreciate it.
Barbara and Natalia, for hosting and giving this webinar. It's very informative. Thank you also for all the people who are attending and for your input. If you have any questions or remarks that come late into your minds, just don't hesitate to get into contact with one of us. We're always open for that. So I think that's all for now, Ira.
Yes,
Yeah,
thank you very
okay.
much. The recording will be available, if I'm not mistaken, right, in our website? Yeah, okay.
Will be. And what about the presentation, the sheets? Could we also?
We'll share it also. Yeah, we will share the presentation.
Great. Okay, so you will get that as well. Okay. Have a nice day.
Many thanks. Bye-bye.